Joining us now on ICANN Media, Krauss with Centis. You're the chief scientist there.
That's correct.
Tell us first what Centis is.
Centis is occupational health and safety consultancy. It's based in Brisbane, Australia, and we have about 70 psychologists worldwide. And so we focus primarily on the high reliability, heavy industries, looking at all of the psychology side of safety.
Okay. That sounds quite broad and interesting as well. I mean, so what does it mean when you go out to a work site or you start working for a company? What is it that you're doing?
Okay, so we're doing three things. The diagnostics, that's my team. I direct the research team. And so we're doing all of the on-site assessments, like qualitative work, like observations, and then also doing focus groups and then surveys to identify the opportunities to build a broader safety culture. And then we do interventions. So that might be like coaching or training or processes. And then my team circles back again to see if we've actually had any impact. So the evaluation aspect of the work.
Well, it's interesting because during your speech you mentioned a lot of the other topics that we're here, and you say psychology comes into play in all of them, yet others don't label it as such. But we are talking about changing behavior when it comes to safety.
Yeah, exactly. And to be honest, there was a lot of conversations by I think presenters that maybe don't have psychology background, but because they're working in the safety context and we're trying to drive more effective compliance, citizenship type safety work, they recognize there's always a psychology element. And I would just mention too that a lot of the traditional behavioral based programs that maybe were focusing more on specific behavior, really what we've recognized, I think everyone's come along with this idea, is we got to focus more on the attitudes and the motivation so that you have the fundamental mindset to drive those new behaviors, right?
Well, it's interesting. One of the speakers too said that there's some companies that believe that discipline is the way to go about doing. Now that was the way ages ago. They obviously don't care about the psychology of their employees then.
No, that's
things have changed quite a bit.
Yeah, that's definitely the stick approach.
Yeah.
Hey, no, I think it has changed, and I would be honest to say that the heavy industries and the high reliability industries, they still can have a control and command mentality from executives, and they're slowly seeing the value of things like we would call recognizing behaviors and inspirational behaviors, transformational leadership. That hasn't been where they've sat and felt comfortable. And to do those things, it requires you to give employees a lot more opportunity, right, to succeed and fail. And there's a discomfort with that. So they're still going through their own change process of being comfortable with that.
So the psychology comes into play at a number of levels in a corporation right now. Is it easy to change people's attitudes and the way they do things, like to be more safety conscious, things like that?
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay, thank you.
No.
And that's why you're one of the keynote speakers here, yes.
I know. I felt like I was giving kind of a pessimistic story, but I think sometimes we paint it like there's this magic bullet, and if we all like have a pizza party, then we're all going to be like, let's do the same thing next week. And it's really not about that. I think it's that getting at finding the real meaning and purpose behind why we're being safe. You would see now that there's a lot of attention on going home to people that you love at night, right? That's the motivation.
Yes.
But I'd really like to see it move towards this idea of we're motivated to keep each other safe at work and recognize that the company being safe and having a good safety record, it actually impacts on me. You know, that's a different level of sophistication and commitment to safety.
Do you think it's going to move fast in the coming years as far as changing behavior, getting people to think a little bit more about what's going on?
I think so. I think we're at a critical juncture. I have to say, I spoke with my chairman last night of my company and mentioned all of the presentations and the really more mature, sophisticated discussion that's happening at this conference. And he said, you know, he remarked, it's been in the industry a long time. Well, that wouldn't have been the case 10 years ago. Like, no way. And so now that we're going psychology and understanding the role of like human behavior and mindsets, really the next step is to try and drive some of that continuous improvement mentality where compliance is not enough, and I see some of that happening. So I'm actually quite optimistic, regardless of how terrible I sound about how hard this can be.
Right.
I'm optimistic we can do it.
Well, you're optimistic people will work hard at making change.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, no worries. Appreciate it.
We've been chatting with Krauss here on ICANN Media.